Medical disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and does not serve as medical advice. Kate and John are not medical professionals. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent any illness. Always consult your physician before making lifestyle changes. Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 50. What are we talking about today?
That's so crazy.
I know.
We are talking about motivation, discipline, and devotion.
I love this. I love this topic so much.
We'll get into that.
How's the week?
Good. I recently got some test results back from my blood work, and my thyroid levels are back to an optimal range.
Mhm.
They were out of range when I first started working with my naturopath. And I'm just so glad because I have had thyroid issues in my past, and it just goes to show, like, finding the root cause, working on the right things, lifestyle changes. You don't need medication. That's all I'm gonna say. Like,
Yeah.
it happened. I have the blood work to prove it, and it affects my overall health. My acne is doing incredible. My skin feels great. Like,
Did it without the side effects of all that medication too.
yeah. So everything is really just in sync with each other, and I just overall feel better. So it's really an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm really
we're
happy for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Our wedding is in a little over 2 months,
We're getting there.
and our Jack and Jill party that we're having is this weekend. So
Yep.
it's like the events are happening because then in a few weeks I'll have my bachelorette. So
Yeah. It's almost time.
I know.
In lieu of a wedding gift, go buy some merch from New Moon Apparel.
Yeah. You didn't even talk about your bachelor trip.
No, I didn't. I went on my bachelor trip. It was great. As you can probably guess, I didn't have an interest in going out to bars or nightclubs. So we got a nice cabin in the woods. We went on a hike. There were lots of cookies though. That did me in. Lots of cookies and sugar and gummies, gummy candy. I had dyes for the first time in years, and yeah, my skin was crawling that night. So that was very fun. Not going to do it again for a while, probably ever. But yeah, it was great. It was very peaceful. I keep sharing with people there was a thunderstorm at night, and like 1 a.m. I just got up, and me, my brother, and one of our friends just went and sat in the porch. We talked. Actually, my brother was taking a nap, but just listening to the rain in the screened-in porch, and it was so peaceful. And had a conversation about aliens and
Exciting things.
oh yeah, deep stuff. So, no, it was really just a much needed rest, and it was a great time. So
I'm
yeah,
glad you had a good time.
yeah.
Anything else to share?
Let me check my notes. I'm praying that our basement is renovated by the time this episode comes out.
Or at least in progress.
Yeah, we're getting there. I can't wait.
I'm excited.
I'm like really excited.
It's going to be great.
I walked down there today and I was like, there's so much room. It's just not being used.
It will be used again soon.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
Yes. So, motivation,
Yeah,
discipline, and devotion.
So we're talking about this because a lot of people have kind of some predetermined ideas about what these words mean and like how they relate to them and how they kind of use them in their life. So I wanted to differentiate between the three of them and really kind of recommend to people to lean into devotion a little more.
Yeah.
So we'll get into like what that really means and how to like kind of embody that.
Well, I think it's really interesting. And I'll kind of talk more about what I'm about to say means. But in my MMA journey, right, I was very hard on myself. It was just beating myself up. It was suicide recovery and like super mean to myself and all day, every day. And, I'm training and I'm motivated. But like you see a motivational video, I eat that up. I love it. But then it's like, you need another motivational video to get motivated. And then in that journey, I found discipline, which was if I'm serious about this, I got to really, do it. And then I reached the point of devotion. So we'll get into what all that means, but I think it's a really beautiful journey between the three, and also understanding and respecting what the three of them can do for you and how they all kind of play together.
Yeah. So let's start with motivation. Motivation is a feeling,
Hmm.
right? It's a feeling that comes from your thoughts. So, whatever you're thinking, like, oh, I feel motivated because I just listened to this motivational speech, or I just pep talked myself into something, or I had a conversation with someone, or I feel good today because I slept great, ate great. And so my thoughts are positive.
Yeah.
So, you then have like an easier time getting into the feeling of motivation. But the feeling isn't something that you can just automatically access at all times because circumstances could be different. Things could be going on with in life, and maybe you don't feel the most motivated, but it's so that's why it's really hard if you are leaning into motivation to get you to do something, because
Mm,
sometimes you're just not going to feel that way, and you can't just always have like that as an excuse like, well, I don't feel motivated.
right. If you rely on your motivation, you're going to have days you can't find it.
Yeah.
I always have I kind of reached a point of understanding motivation is sort of like added value. Like if
Mhm.
you feel it that day, that's great. Use it, crush it.
Mhm.
If you don't feel it that day, you need something else. And that's really kind of where discipline and these other things come in. But I think, yeah, the key point with motivation is it's fleeting. It's a feeling.
Mhm.
And you can't, this idea of like, oh, I'm a motivated person. Motivated people aren't, that's not really a thing. You don't feel that constantly forever.
Yeah. I mean, if
And
you want to call yourself a motivated person, that's great, but that comes because of like the thoughts
right.
that you have given to yourself and that you have kind of intentionally like set for yourself. So
Right.
that takes practice. You can kind of practice your way into it, but that comes from like the thoughts and the beliefs that you have and like those being repeated and consistent for you to
Mm.
then pull in that feeling of motivation.
Yeah, and I think some people are better than others at sort of finessing that self-talk to get themselves motivated.
Right.
We have a friend I saw recently who was just beating himself up, like talking to himself, and I was like, that's not positive. That's not like a healthy, motivating self-talk. He's like, no, that's really motivating for me.
Mm,
And I think what people need to understand is like that kind of motivation is not sustainable. You will have a moment where you snap. You will have a moment where that becomes disempowering. So it's really about like what's going to support you for the long term. Don't play the 1 year game, play the 30-year game,
yeah. For the forever game.
the forever game. So, how does this take us then to discipline, right? We can't be motivated all the time. How does discipline come in here?
So discipline is really when you like set an intention, you set like a task, a habit, something that you are saying you're going to do, and you do it.
Yeah.
Like you follow up, you're not relying on how you feel.
Yeah.
Maybe you are disciplined to getting to the gym 3 days a week. Maybe you don't feel good. Like
You're
you're
still going
just,
to the gym.
you're not feeling like it, but you're disciplined to get there because that is what you promised yourself. You know it's the best decision for you. And you're seeing more of like the long term goal and outcome of it.
Yeah. I always kind of saw discipline as that sort of like tough love approach. It's kind of like too bad you got to go do it anyway, you know?
Yeah. It can be that way, but that's kind of why I guess I'll
It's a
get into
fine
it with
line.
devotion,
Yeah.
right? Like that is why I think some people don't want to,
Right.
like they have a harder time with like leaning into being disciplined because they see it as like a harsh thing. So they're like, I'll just kind of wait until I'm motivated. But if they see it in that way, if they see discipline as like this harsh, like hard love, or what did you just
Tough
say? Tough
love.
love.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's the word? If they see it in that way and that doesn't feel good to them or like that doesn't feel safe to them, then they're going to have a harder time to lean into, okay, I'm going to be disciplined because they see discipline as a negative thing.
Right. And that's I think the fine line is I think I think the intention of discipline is positive, but the
Absolutely.
execution is not always there. Right?
Right.
So a lot of times the intention is having a plan and sticking to it no matter the circumstances.
Yes.
I think the execution typically tends to be that more tough love of like, too bad, suck it up, go do it. This is what you
Sometimes.
wanted. And maybe not for everyone, certainly, but I know my head, I'm very intense, and that's kind of like where it ends up.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like when you actually follow through, though, not sometimes, always, like when you do follow through with being disciplined and then you're actually doing the thing you said you were going to do, what you committed to, that's when you start to get more motivation. That's when you
Yeah.
start to get the feelings of confidence because you have followed through and taken the action.
Motivation is proof of the work that you have done.
Right.
It's the reward for the work that you have done.
Yeah.
And I think too, the other thing with discipline, and we talked about this a little bit. I don't remember the episode, but it was the idea of keeping promises to yourself. And actually, it was building confidence, because we talked about how when you make a promise to yourself, you keep that promise, you work toward it. That is building your confidence. And that
Mhm.
also is building self respect and self worth. I mean, I think back to like when I was in recovery, it like I would say I wanted to do all kinds of things. I didn't do any of them. I didn't keep any word with myself. I would exercise for a month and stop for 3. Like,
Mhm.
I was all over the place. So I think truly like that starting point was me feeling like I had value and worth, and I respected myself and my word, and all the things I said I was going to do. And
Right.
so I think discipline kind of builds your character in that sense.
Yeah. And you said, like respecting the agreements that you've made with yourself.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's keeping those promises and again, being intentional. This
Yeah.
is what I want to do. And this is like what the outcome of that is. Like, this is why, this is how it helps me reach my goals and sticking to the plan.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I also want to make the point about all 3 of these. They're not necessarily good or bad. It's more understanding what they are and when they come into play and how they help you reach your goals, because the reality is you will need some element, some bit of all 3 of these.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to kind of talk about them because people have like these different ideas in their mind about what they mean.
Yeah.
And just like from past experiences, from the beliefs that we have formed, from what we've been told. And so we relate to these things in these different ways. So it's like kind of allowing you to like actually think about what these mean for you, how you have them in your life, and how they can be helpful
Yeah.
for you.
Well, I mean, even in like entrepreneurship, or someone who's particularly ambitious in their career, like, you're not going to be motivated all the time. And if you are someone who thinks you're going to be motivated all the time, what happens to those people is they're super motivated. They make a lot of moves, and then they get burned out, and they're like, oh, I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
So, how does this then transition into devotion?
I love the word devotion. I feel like that one has just a lot of power behind it.
Yeah.
When I think of devotion, I feel like it is being disciplined, but in a different way. Like, it's really powerful. It's really positive. It's like really connecting with your why behind it.
Mm,
So yes, you have like these goals, and whatever this goal is great, and you can be disciplined towards that goal. But when you feel the devotion
yeah.
towards your goals, like, then you're really connecting with yourself. You're really connecting with your reason why. Like, why do I have this goal? Why is this important to me? What happens if I don't follow through with this goal? Like, then
Mm.
what? So,
Am I going to have that regret?
yeah,
And also it feels more like that soul component of holistic
definitely.
living. Um,
And when you're able to like connect in that way, I feel like it actually can help you get to the motivational feeling as
right.
well. Again, it's like a little more positive way of seeing it, but it still is like very similar to discipline. Like, you're devoted to something, you're going to stick to it. You're going to stick to the promises you've made yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm realizing now there's kind of a holistic aspect to these 3. Like, supporting your motivation will take a stepping stone into discipline, and prioritizing your discipline will, you know, help you find more motivation and help you take that step into devotion. So I think they all really help each other. Something I wanted to share is like, I think discipline feels like sacrifice to me. It's very much like, you may be miserable, but do it.
Mm.
And devotion sounds more to me like prioritizing because this is what's meaningful and beautiful to me.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like these words have meanings. Like we
Yeah.
have all given meanings as individuals, as a society
Yeah.
to these words. So, like the way you feel about these words and what these actions mean,
Yeah.
it makes a difference in your life.
Right. So I think discipline feeling like sacrifice and devotion feeling like prioritizing,
Yeah.
right? Kind of it it, it to me just sounds more like having passion for something.
Right. Again, like that's again why I think that's part of like the why that could be behind it. Like I have passion. I have like this big reason why I want this goal. I want this dream.
Yeah.
So you want to be devoted to it and it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing.
Yeah. It's what you're called to and wanting to do and truly wanting to work toward.
Yeah. When I looked up the definition of devotion, it said like giving your all to something.
Mm.
And I kind of thought of it in a way of like giving your all to yourself.
Yeah.
And it is truly the highest form of self love that you can have
Yeah.
is committing to things, making these promises to yourself, and just doing what you need to do for yourself to have your best life, to reach the goals that you want to reach.
Yeah. You just said something about these words matter. And it made me think of, in kind of like the higher consciousness circles and mystery school teachings, there's this idea of words and the language that we use is actually casting spells. And that's why we
Mhm.
call it spelling,
Mm,
right? And the concept behind that is, like our bodies, our words and our voice, there's a sound, there's a frequency to it. And it's just really interesting. Like any word you use and any way you word something could give off a different feeling.
yeah.
And so I think that's frankly one of the big things I feel about like becoming a parent is like teaching my children that the words you use truly matter with
Yeah.
other people, but especially with yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I recently used the word devotion with one of my clients because I was
Yeah.
talking to her about like some new habits that she wanted to start incorporating. And I was like, I asked her to journal on like, what does devotion mean to you? What does it mean to be devoted to yourself and like to your family?
Yeah.
Because part of her why was to like be a better mom.
Mm,
And that's beautiful. And that's like that really passionate piece, that's like the why, that's really connecting with the reason behind
mm.
you wanting to stay disciplined.
Yeah. When I think about discipline, I always think of David Goggins and his book Can't Hurt Me. And there were just times I was reading that book and I was just like, this is nonsense. But I think it's more about right, like for him, he was super disciplined to it, sure, but he had a passion for it. He was devoted to his goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's important
Mhm.
is understanding, you know, your devotion to something truly and that's, a larger discussion of living in authenticity, but topic for another time.
Mhm.
But I think we'll leave you with that. There's a difference between motivation, discipline, and devotion. But the three really do support each other in a very beautiful, holistic sense.
Yeah. So keep promises to yourself, for yourself, but also it affects like the others in your life too.
Yeah.
And when you really are devoted to something and you make progress towards something, like that affects your relationships with others, that affects your families, that affects everything in your life. So yeah, I just really love looking at it in that way.
Yeah. I think one last note is, anybody who ever wanted to do something that they were told was impossible, they were devoted to it and they achieve it. And that's, again, a larger discussion, but that's about the energetic state they were in, truly living that passion and working toward it and being decided. There's manifestation at play there. They desired it, they believed it, they expected it. And
And took action. Like the devotion was the action
right.
in play.
And the others around them, they start to build a team of other people who believe you can sell the dream, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at play. And I think that truly spending some time on your what you're dealing with in your goals could go a long way.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.